Hello and welcome to this video on the RC Biker channel. Thank you very much for tuning in as always. Today we're going to be having a look and doing the first preparation phase of this 1/10th scale, or 1/9th scale I believe actually, Turnigy Trooper, which I bought on eBay for the grand total of £30. So we're going to take it over to the table, have a little look, see what's under the shell, clean it up, fix it up and hopefully do the first start today. So I paid £30 for this one. So I think it's pretty much a bargain. So let's have a look and see what we got. So here it is then, underneath the body shell. So like I said, this is the 1/9th scale Turnigy Trooper. This was sold by Hobbyking a couple of years ago, and I bought this for £30 off eBay as another little project that I thought that we could get on with here on the channel. So it's pretty much complete. I've already noticed that there's a few little issues. Firstly, obviously this exhaust is hanging off. And of course the spur gear, if we have a look in there, is completely stripped. So there's a couple of spare ones inside the box as well that I can do that with. So apart from that, it also has an intermittent issue with the radio system. So I'm probably just going to pop in one of my FSGT2 receivers. Thank you very much to the very kind person that donated 2 of those to the channel. The Amazon wishlist is down below. And also I think that the fuel tank, the lid is very loose, so possibly needs a new spring or something. But I'm hoping today that we can get this thing cleaned up and possibly started. I'm also going to potentially replace these 2 servos as well with some metal geared ones and see how we go. So I'm not going to show the cleaning. Firstly I'm going to have the engine out, and from there I will do a little bit of cleaning. So let's start by removing the engine. So let's start by taking out these 4 screws then. I like to take the engine out because it's going to help me to clean it. It's going to make replacing that spur gear easier, and also I'm going to change the clutch bell as well. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these 4 screws and put them somewhere safe, and we're going to remove the engine. It's an SH18 engine in this car. I find SH engines are generally rather reliable, so SH engine is gladly received. Seems to have decent compression, but until we start it and it gets hot we won't really know what sort of condition this one is in, because normally engines with low compression tend to run worse when they're hot than cold, so we won't really know. And it's always a chance you take when you buy a second-hand Nitro. You know, we don't know what sort of condition the engine is in, so it's always a chance you take. Right then, let's remove the engine, turn it back over. This uses a slide carburetor, and here it is. So here's the engine then. Looks pretty decent, doesn't it? Not too bad. Obviously needs a bit of a clean, so I'll just pop that to one side. And next thing I'm going to do is remove this gearbox, because we need to remove this anyway in order to replace the spur gear. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Lovely, 1 gearbox removed. Let's go ahead and replace the spur gear. So you can see that with the engine, the gearbox and the fuel tank removed, this thing is pretty dirty. So I'm going to go ahead, give this a good clean, and I'll come back to you guys in a couple of minutes when it's clean and we're ready to reinstall the fuel tank and the gearbox. Okay, just to give you a little update then. So I've given it a little clean. You know, we're not looking for perfection. It's a lot cleaner than it was. I've just replaced the spur gear, and I've also just cleaned up the brakes because they were all oily, and I've also replaced the differential oil inside here as well. So as far as the gearbox is concerned, that's all pretty nice. Here's the engine. So I've just popped a new exhaust gasket on, a new waterproof 2-stage air filter, and I've given it a good clean. I'm not going to be able to finish this off today unfortunately, because as I took the clutch apart it transpires that I need a new clutch flywheel locking nut on here unfortunately, so I'm not going to be able to finish this off today because I need to order a few parts. So I'm going to go ahead now and change over both of the servos for metal gear ones, and then I'm going to replace the gearbox, and then we'll probably leave it there today. So here are the servos that I'm going to be replacing it with. They're just a cheap metal gear one, but certainly better than the originals that were in there. Okay, so that's the steering one installed. I've left the servo horn screw out for a second just because I want to center it in a second. Now let's move on to the throttle servo. Okay, so the servos are now installed, so now I'm just going to pop in my FS-GT2 receiver, and then what we will do is just bind it, get the servo set up, and then I'll replace the gearbox, and then that will probably be phase 1. And then next time when I've got the parts for the engine, we'll get the engine installed, and also we need a new fuel tank as well because there's a little crack in that old one. Okay, so I've just binded the receiver, let's check. That's nice, and the throttle, lovely. Might need to set the throttle up a little bit better once the engine is installed again, and then I can see how the carb linkage is set up. But the point is, it's all in there, all working perfectly fine. So let's go ahead now and replace the gearbox, and then there we go, that'll do for today. Okay, so here's the car so far then. So just to recap, engine and fuel tank need a couple of parts, so they're not reinstalled, but it's had a full clean, gearbox rebuild, and I have just replaced both of the servos with metal gear ones, and I think it's looking pretty sweet. So I'll catch you guys next time in part 2 of this video, when we get the engine back installed, the fuel tank back installed, the exhaust back on, and get this one fired up for the very first time, or at least the very first time in my care. Catch you guys later. Thanks very much for watching.